Welcome back. This is Chris in Baltimore. As people around here say, Baltimore is my birthplace, the charm city here in Maryland. Come on over a little closer there, Ernst. Got to come in the camera angle. There we go. Okay. So I'm here with Ernst Roets. Some of you know him. He's author, historian, political scientist. I mean, I don't know what else we call him. No, none of that. You're definitely an author.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
You can say all that.
Okay, we can say that. We don't want to.
Yeah.
You're not a right-wing podcast, right?
No.
Okay, just checking. All right, so we're here in Baltimore, and Ernst came down and take a look around. He's on another trip to the States, and I just want to get a little feedback from Ernst. He's been to the States before a few times, so but you hadn't been to Baltimore, had you?
No, I only passed through. I mean, it's between Washington and New York, but
so you got to go through.
I've only been to the station, but
that doesn't count.
First time, yeah, station doesn't count, and airport doesn't count.
Yeah, so it's your first time actually in Charm City, as they call it. So, first impressions.
Well, it's a great city. I can see from where we are now that you can see that there's been some economic decline or stagnation in the sense that some of the shops are closed. And
since COVID, especially.
Yeah, but it's still a beautiful city with a rich history, and especially the area we're in now looks like a great place to go for a stroll, and yeah, it's wonderful.
Especially in the summertime, although it gets a little warm here, 35, 38 degrees in the summertime, and the walk out here is full of people. You see behind us right now, it's still late winter, early spring, only the second or third day of spring here, so people just starting to come out now. But we did go to the Railroad Museum, and we took a look at Federal Hill, which is the hill they have here where they have the cannon up on top of to defend the city. Quite a view up there, huh?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's great to be here, and it's great. I mean, we have cities in South Africa, but not as big as the cities in America, so it's always great to experience.
So this city, when I was a kid, went through a very rough period of time. I remember coming here for the 4th of July on Federal Hill, which is just located to the left over here, my left. And we went up there earlier, and we watched the fireworks, because that's a big thing. They put the fire boats out here in the 4th of July for the celebration. They shoot the water cannons in the air, fireworks go off. It's a great view. And then I remember leaving and walking past the spice warehouses, which would be just behind Ernst on the street. They're no longer there. They've been eliminated. And I watched somebody get stabbed to death.
That's crazy.
I was about 5, 6 years old at the time.
That's really crazy.
It was.
Yeah. I think I mentioned to you earlier, when I was in Cuba last year for holiday, not for work, I saw someone drown as well. Which was also very, very shocking. It's not a good thing to see.
It's terrible.
Someone either murdered or dying. It's very horrible.
So this is the part where I'm gonna call out Ernst Roets. So Ernst Roets went to a communist country on holiday. You got to wonder about where this guy's political sentiments are. I mean, you won't catch me dead in a communist country. I still won't go to Russia.
No, you should go to Russia and Cuba.
No.
I've never been to Russia. I'd love to go.
Well,
Cuba was amazing.
I was going to go for the Sochi Olympics, but as a former intelligence officer, you don't go to Russia.
Yeah.
Even though I never spied on Russia, but they don't care. They see the title and they'll lock you up. But let's get back to your foundation that you started here recently. I think some people are aware of it. You announced it. You've had some videos put up on it. I interviewed about it. Can you just give a little rundown, tell the audience a little bit about what that is and what you're hoping to achieve?
So it's called the Pioneer Foundation, or the Pioneer Initiative. We might still change the name. It's deliberately a very preliminary announcement, because we wanted to get a basic structure up and running so that we can get people to become involved. And so we're setting out our first newsletter now on Monday. It's already written and all of that.
Will it be in English and Afrikaans or just
Both.
Afrikaans? Okay,
Both.
good.
Yeah. It'll be in both. And the crux of it is it's something of a think tank combined with a pressure group. So the think tank part of it is to do research to say that South Africa is failing and it's continuing to fail.
No. Okay. Fake news. South Africa is not failing. I've heard from Paul Mashatile that everything is fine. I just don't listen to this guy. Sorry. I heard it from the deputy president, man.
Yeah, of course. Well, they would like us to believe that. So it's continuing to fail, and there's going to be change. There is change on the horizon. We just don't know what it is yet.
Hopefully it's peaceful change.
And things might get worse, yes, and we need to figure out if it gets worse, what could happen potentially, and how can we prepare for that. But then also, how could it be better? In other words, what could a better political system look like for South Africa? And the two core principles that the Pioneer Initiative is based on is firstly the principle of decentralization of political power, that the central government has significantly less power. And the second one is self-governance, that people should be able to govern themselves. And so we're doing research in that regard. In other words, preparing roadmaps, where are we heading and so forth, and how to get there. But then secondly, we're already advocating for this, advocating for a system that is more decentralized and in which people can govern themselves.
Well, let me ask you this, because we didn't get a chance to talk about this in the last conversation, which was through Zoom. So what about decentralization of economy? South Africa, of course, I would argue, has in some respects an oligarchy when it comes to many industries. You have 5 major banks that really control the banking industry. You have several mining companies that really control the mining industry. You have a handful of holding companies control the restaurants and the retail industry. And I don't think most South Africans even realize that. They think they're going to John Dory's, they're going to Cape Town Fish Market, they're going to Eggers, they're going here. And all those places are owned by just a couple of companies. I don't think people realize that. Is that something you'll be doing research into? Maybe, you know, I don't want to say monopolies, because not monopolies, but it's a small number of large companies that compete in that space. And for a new player to get involved, it's very difficult economically.
Yeah, well, that certainly is the case. And in principle, we should, I think in general, we should put a lot more effort into supporting smaller businesses. I mean, there are so many stories of small businesses, startups trying to make it, and then they get squashed by big companies. And you hear it all the time. So it really is a challenge. I'm not sure if that would be a primary focus, the economic aspect, or at least the business aspect of the Pioneer Initiative. There would certainly be an economic focus as well. But the main focus is on the political dispensation, the system of which the economy will, of course, form part. And hopefully we can help to encourage support for smaller businesses to get up and running, because that certainly it's a big challenge. I mean, I've seen it repeatedly, and I think people watching this know from their own experience and their own circle of friends how difficult it is to get something up and running if you compete into, especially international corporations or big national corporations.
Well, in fact, that's something kind of akin to that, not a small business, but right now the government of South Africa is putting in measures of protectionists and protect ArcelorMittal in the Vol Triangle, because they can't survive because of cheap steel imports. They're being overwhelmed by cheap steel imports, particularly from China, but not exclusively. And also the fact that they've got all these labor requirements which are burning. And then, of course, all the raw materials they need, the coking and then the coal to produce the steel. Well, there's no more railroads. They've been destroyed. And so they're bringing it in by truck, which drives the cost up. So their costs have grown, if not exponentially, arithmetically, and that's a real problem. And that's a big business that needs protection from the government. I'm not a protectionist, I like free trade, but I understand why the government of South Africa wants to do that. Otherwise, you lose 3,500 jobs plus all the ancillary things it supports. But the strength of the German economy historically and the strength of America's economy still today is small business. Small businesses create most of the jobs in this country, and it's the same in Germany. As they say in Germany, it's called Mittelstand, and that's the bedrock of the German economy. It's not the Krupps, it's not the BMWs and Mercedes, Daimler Benz. It's the small businesses that create the jobs. Same here. And South Africa, if that was unleashed, if BEE would disappear, and if people would have an opportunity to support small businesses, in whatever fashion possible, grants and loans, technical advice, then maybe you could unleash your economy.
Yeah, because the thing is, we often speak about infrastructure, we like railroads and so forth, but you also need an economic infrastructure, a system or a frame of reference or a framework in which you can operate and function. And it's just becoming increasingly difficult in South Africa. One aspect thereof is the tax system that has become so complicated that you need to get people, you need to pay people to help you do your taxes.
To figure out what the deal is,
what to do and how to do it. And it's not becoming, it's not being simplified, it's becoming more and more complicated. And so that, again, it's not sustainable. You cannot do that ad infinitum. At some point it's a bubble. And so we're saying that we must start preparing for that. But certainly the economic infrastructure or the framework is very important. To have freedom in the economy, which is ironically quite the opposite to what the economic freedom fighters are advocating for.
That's true. They're looking for something quite different. So back to the political aspect, which is your main focus here, because I want to delve in and see if you're interested in the economic. But back to political focus, I think there's thousands of cases, but 2 poignant cases where this decentralization could have had a much better effect in governance in South Africa. Policing, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And then also the Cape Town Day Zero water crisis. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was a situation where the national, the provincial, and the municipal government are all responsible for water, which is considered a human right in South Africa according to your constitution. But they all failed across the board for a lot of reasons without getting into it. But if you had decentralized government, then one wouldn't have to rely on the other. You could get support from them, but you'd be able to execute locally. And then the people locally, if you actually voted for the people that you wanted to rather than the party list, then you could hold them accountable by throwing them out next time.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I think it goes for all the parastatals, the state-owned enterprises. It's corrupt, it's inefficient, but the government keeps spending money to keep it alive, even though it's not delivering on what it's supposed to be
You
delivering.
wouldn't be talking about South African Airways, Transnet, Airports Company South Africa, Eskom.
Exactly, all of it. Yeah.
You've heard of these. Yeah, they're the ones that don't give you the service you desire.
So it's definitely the case, and with the police, there are many examples of police stations cooperating, for example, with local institutions like AfriForum on a local level, but then they get pressure from the minister not to
back
do that.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's. I want to say almost every major problem in South Africa at the moment has to do with the fact that there's an overly centralized state that has way too much power, combined with incompetence there,
And corruption.
And corruption, of course, which makes it very dangerous.
So, I mean, until recently, until the elections of 2024, the May 29th elections, pretty much every decision in the country was really all made in Latuli House, ANC headquarters.
Yeah, well, that's true. So you could say, in a certain sense, that South Africa is governed from. South Africa is very big and very diverse, and it's all governed from the Union buildings in Pretoria. But even that is not quite true. It's all governed from Latuli House.
And they're still trying to do that, but with the budget, they've run into a bit of a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
They're not going to get what they need unless they cooperate with their coalition partners.
Yeah, and even though, I mean, Latuli House is also falling apart.
Well, yeah, physically falling apart, not just literally.
Yeah. They're not paying their employees and so forth. But that, at least metaphorically, you could say South Africa is still governed from the Latuli House. In other words, it's the party that governs. It's not the government. The government takes its cues from the party, and the party has a very clear ideological mandate and objective, and that's what they're trying to implement.
Well, I think it speaks volumes that whenever people introduce President Ramaphosa, historically, they'll introduce him as the president of the African National Congress and then the president of the Republic of South Africa. That tells a very, very strong story there.
Yes.
In my view, you're president of the country, and then if you're head of your party, that comes second.
Yes, exactly. And but that's the goal. I mean, that's the National Democratic Revolution, is getting the party to take control of the levers of power so that they can then use the levers of power to implement their revolution. And they've been working very hard to achieve that. Fortunately, in a certain sense, they are very incompetent. So we would have been much farther down the line in South Africa if we had a competent government or a competent ruling party. In other words, we would have been farther down the line in implementing these socialist solutions, land reform and so forth.
Well, they actually had a 69% parliamentary advantage at one time. You just need 2/3, 66 plus 1, 66% plus 1. They had that for one cycle, and they didn't change things.
Yep. So former President Kgalema Motlanthe investigated the land reform issue and why it's failing, as they say. And he actually said the number one reason for the failure is corruption, more than anything else.
But the ANC's not listening to the former president.
Yeah, of course. So
nor is the EFF or MK.
So that's the point, is if they were competent, in a certain sense, it would have been worse in South Africa because we would have been further down the line. But the problem with the incompetence is also that basic infrastructure is collapsing. Like
everywhere.
Electricity, water,
roads.
Yeah,
so South Africans don't drive on the left or the right. They don't drive left or right side of the road. They drive on what's left of the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of potholes.
That's right. Yes.
So I always give South Africans a hard time because they drive on the wrong side of the road. We drive on the right side of the road. They drive left. But that was years ago. Now they just drive on what's left of the road.
Wherever they
can find a safe spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so it's kind of sad to say that, but it is kind of true. So let's go back to, very quickly before we wrap up here, your new initiative here, the Pioneer Initiative. When we first spoke, you had some encouraging signs that people were interested in it. I mean, some people came out, oh, another one of these things, another think tank. You heard some of that early on. I heard that. But then when people heard you speak to me in that first interview, it was complete about face for most people, like, well, okay, this sounds kind of interesting.
Yep.
What's the feedback been since then? That's been a few weeks since we spoke.
Yeah, so the feedback has been tremendous. We've been had really a lot.
Tremendously good.
Tremendously good.
Okay,
yes,
just checking.
Yeah. Well, I did see some people say, well, why start something new? And if people feel that way, then they shouldn't support it.
Yeah, it's their prerogative, right? No one's twisting their arm.
The point is we need a variety of institutions, and we need institutions with different focus areas, with a unique focus. The Pioneer Initiative is not duplicating what another institution is doing, or if there is an overlap, it's a small overlap. It's certainly not the core focus. The core focus is this combination of a think tank and a pressure group. It's about preparing for. It's not doing community organizing. I don't foresee it being involved with court cases.
I think you're not going to do any marches.
not planning
No
to
marches.
do any marches.
Okay. No service delivery protest.
We're not doing any of that.
Well, I'm not interested.
So something along those lines might happen for some reason in the future, but that's definitely not the plan.
That's not the plan. Okay.
Because that's not the core focus. The core
Sure.
focus is to say there needs to be macro change in South Africa, not just another president, not just another party,
Not just window dressing.
not fixing the skirtings when the foundations are broken. That's the point.
Good point. Good point.
And so that's what it's working toward. It's to say what could this change look like and how do we get there? And it's a very, very specific focus. I'm very excited about that. I really enjoy it. But it's still very new. So we're issuing our first newsletter on Monday. And one of the main things we need to answer for now is people sending us emails saying how can I do more than support financially? How can I
Participate, volunteer.
Yeah, exactly. So we're working out ways to do that, and we'll send that out on email on Monday.
Okay, that sounds excellent. It sounds like you're very excited about it, and you're getting some traction. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're quite excited about that, so logistically, I could add that. I spoke with you when I was on the airport just before coming to the US. Logistically, we haven't been able to, set up an office and things like that because we launched it, and then for sort of short-term reasons, I had to take a flight to America, for which I'm grateful. This has been an extremely productive trip, but I'm very much looking forward to getting back home and really working on the nuts and bolts of this thing in the coming weeks. So April will be an extremely important month for us.
Yeah, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Ernst is here negotiating World Bank loan for South Africa, with a $1.5 billion loan that the government wants. He's here representing them.
I was at Fort Knox yesterday.
Is the gold there?
Yeah, I was there.
We're still waiting for the audit.
Not anymore. I was
there
with a backpack, and now there's nothing left.
My brother, I think you're going to need a couple dump truck loads to get the gold out of
Yeah,
that place. But we're all waiting anxiously. Doge and the government talking about auditing Fort Knox and seeing if the gold's actually there.
Yeah.
That was like a month ago. We haven't heard anything, so I'm beginning to wonder if there's any gold left there. I actually did training at Fort Knox many, many years ago, artillery training there in the Army. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, okay, Ernst, I've had the good fortune and the chance to interview you when you were working for AfriForum at AfriForum's headquarters in South Africa. We've met here in the States previously when you were traveling around, but I've never had a chance to interview, and we've done Zoom from across the ocean, but I've never had a chance to interview in person, and here you do it in my birthplace, the city of Baltimore. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. Well, this is a great place, and happy to be here, and good to be on your channel as well.
Well, thanks a lot. Hey, folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. Be sure to leave a like behind, leave a comment if you don't mind, and I'll check back to see what the comments were later on. I saw a few super chats, but you have to understand that Ernst and I are standing here in front of a mobile phone, and your text is about this big. I did see a few super chats, so thank you to everybody who gave a few super chats. Ernst, any last thoughts you want to share with the audience? Look at the camera, and anything you want to say?
Well, I think thank you for all the support, especially in the last few weeks. I'm really grateful, and we are really grateful. And if people are interested in supporting the Pioneer Initiative, it's easy. The website is pioneerinitiative.org.za. And as I said, we're going to issue a newsletter on Monday, our first newsletter, with some information on how you can become more involved. So you can make a contribution through the website, but if you don't want to do that, then you can sign up for the newsletter, and then we'll send it out on Monday.
All right, excellent. Bye donkey, Caleb. Thanks a lot for your time. Okay. All right, folks, take care. Be safe. Hold on, because until that thing stops spinning.